Welcome to the MindBod Adventure Pod, where every week we dive into a different practice, a different perspective on life, and you try it out with us. Join us on Substack at mindbodpod.com to watch this episode as a video podcast. And if you want to support our crazy adventures and get fun perks and exclusives along the way, join us as a paid subscriber. Now, onto this week's adventure.
Sarah Selecky, welcome to the MindBod Adventure Pod. I'm your host, Jeff Warren, and with me here is...
I'm Tasha Schumann.
Founding host, Tasha Schumann. I am Tasha's lackey, and we're very happy to be doing this episode with you. For Sarah, you and I are old friends. We've known each other for freaking ages, like 15 years or something.
Yeah, I mean, a long time. I don't release a book without calling you.
It's true. Well, you've written two fabulous books, one of which has a slightly ironic portrayal of a slightly culty meditation teacher. When I was reading it, I was like, oh yeah, I wonder where she got this.
Was it based on you?
I don't know. We could talk about that later. I don't think so, but maybe slightly. That was Radiant Shimmering Light, and then you also wrote an award-winning bunch of stories. I think that was your first collection, wasn't it? This Cake is for the Party.
That's right.
So good.
Yeah.
And now you're a writing teacher, so maybe tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am a writing teacher. I was teaching writing before I began publishing my own books. I was teaching to learn how to write them and then kind of collecting tips and tricks all along for myself mainly, and then also writing them down and sharing them to see how they worked on the guinea pigs. They work really well, turns out. I have a new book called Stories, A State of Mind, which takes all of those years of teaching, about 20, 25 years of teaching through my school, Story, State of Mind, and coaching, Story, State of Mind coaching, and the Sarah Selecky Writing School. It all kind of comes together and alchemizes in this book. So I'm pretty excited for this new chapter.
Well, we're very lucky because we're going to get to experience a few of your writing exercises. So the hope is that the listeners will take out a pen and paper and follow along as well. And there's so much to say about this because both Tasha and I are meditation teachers, we're writers. So there's a lot that we're interested in here. And I've heard tons of good things about your school. I know lots of people that have been through your classes and learned your methods. And this is like freaking perfect that we're doing this now.
I love it. And I want to make sure that you've got your pens, and everyone who's listening has their pens and a notebook or some kind of paper. Great. And with the pens, one of my first meditation and writing teachers, actually, Natalie Goldberg, always used to say, bring several fast writing pens. This piece of advice, I now understand why. It's surprising how many writers, when they sit down to do a writing practice or a journaling or just an insight writing, have like a sticky ballpoint pen that actually doesn't bring a lot of pleasure or flow to the process. So I'm just double checking to see like, what kind of pen did you bring and do you like it?
You're making me think of a great little passage in Nicholson Baker when he talked about the pleasures of writing with a ballpoint pen on rubber.
Okay. If your notebook was made of rubber, that would be really fun.
Yeah.
Jeff, you have a good pen. Do you like your pen?
I do like my pen. It glides well.
Okay. Do you want to just jump in? Can I just jump into it?
You can. Yeah. Maybe just the very first thing maybe before we jump right in terms of framing the practice of writing, I see people listening who may not be professional writers or may not even have a journaling practice, why this is something that's interesting to explore. I mean, we'll get into this obviously through the next hour, but anything you want to say kind of up front?
Yeah. I mean, for anyone who's listening who is a writer, there are so many overlaps in a meditation practice and a writing practice. They really, really go well together. But if you're not already a writer, and especially writing by hand is not something that goes beyond sort of the perfunctory in life, like writing emails or getting a list of groceries down or notes, memos, communications at work or whatever. If there's this aspect of creative writing that before you even get to creating in your writing, there's an aspect of awareness or presence that I find the implement of a pen and a notebook can bring you really, really close to that presence without a lot of effort. So for anyone who's listening who is interested in a meditation practice and maybe sitting meditation is not available for various reasons, or maybe just like a really active mind makes it hard, this is an option. This is an option.
Love that. So agree too. We are so on the same page.
Yeah. So the practices that I've brought for us today are 3 very simple deceptively simple, I say, because they're easy to remember, they're easy to bring with you, they're easy to do with anybody, anytime, anywhere. They don't take very long, and they are surprisingly deep. They bring you to a depth of presence and awareness really efficiently. So you don't need a lot of time to feel grounded and to be where you are. And if you are looking to create something, obviously, like this is like great for writers who are creating in any field, whether it's journalism or novelists or memoir, whatever, this is for you. But even if you're not, if you're looking to just maybe settle, understand what you don't know about something that you want to know, make a decision, choose between number of options, or just find a level of insight within yourself that your whole self can take into play, like not just your intellectual self, but your intellectual self as well as your physical and intuitive self at the same time. This is a way to access that. If you're feeling like you're spinning out, like these moments where we just are like, and even though we know all of our practices and we know like take a deep breath or whatever, but sometimes it's hard. And this, I don't know, it's just something about having the pen and the paper takes it out of yourself. It helps you do it. And you can find a way. There might be just a little bit of override of the spinning at the start of the practice where you just need to override the spin enough to just pick up the pen and the paper.
Mm.
But then you really don't have to think about anything or do anything except this. So we'll start by writing down a list of words that start with the letter T. So you can start writing, and as you're writing, I'll just drop in a few little questions and instructions and prompts. Try to go slow. So write every letter as though you're making a picture and not creating a word. So the letter T, slow down, 2 lines. Feel what it feels like for the ink to go on the paper. The reason I like this exercise is there's not even a sentence you have to write. It's just words. I'm going to set a little timer for 3 more minutes. You can write the words across the page if you want, or you can write them down in vertical lists if you want. Just a word, and then a word, and then a word. Watch your mind as you write the words down. Just notice what you might be thinking or not thinking as you come up with this list of words. I'll ask you about it later. One more minute. Okay, write another word or so. And then rest your pen for a minute. And let's just reflect on this. First of all, how do you feel?
I feel very chill.
Yeah, it's nice, right? How do you feel, Jeff?
Ditto. Yeah, it was very frantic at the beginning. I was like, oh, and I thought I had to make it a perfect sentence, just like kind of T alliterative sentence, and then I slowed down, got more chill, mind kind of emptied out. At a certain point, I was like, T's look really weird.
Yeah, right?
Is that a T?
Yeah. I love this exercise. This alone, just for a few minutes, take any letter of the alphabet. This is my go-to practice when I'm agitated.
Really?
Yeah, I think it reminds me that the sentences don't matter, that there's like another intelligence. I don't know what to call. I don't know. As a creative writer, I don't know what we call these things, but there's something like this is a microcosm of like where do ideas come from? And it doesn't matter. It just gives a piece of that surrender.
For me, it was like the invitation to go slow and write the words. It's like every word that I was writing, I was very in touch with the sensory world of that word. So like I wrote down tremble and I was like, "Ugh." And then I wrote down like tarantula and it was like, so it brought me in touch with like the sensual world.
It's kinesthetic
Yeah.
for you. It's kinesthetic. Yeah. Which maybe I don't know you very well, but I'm guessing you may have access to the sensory.
Oh yeah.
That is so cool because I mean, that's where I'm going with these practices is, and what I'm doing with all of my writing and all of my, everything that I teach is really, it's about writing stories. Yeah, kind of. I'm not that great of a storyteller, but it's more about a transmission of energy. It's like really about transmitting it so that when you feel it, the idea is the person reading it feels that.
That's
It goes
a
through.
transmission that you're communicating an idea, a sense impression.
Under, around, through the words.
Yeah. Yeah. The words like carry it. And because they're just words. And when a writer is writing purely from an intellectual place about words and ideas, it's harder for those words to be felt. The story's not felt in the same way. So this is a great practice for creative writers who want to evoke some sense of emotion or sensory awareness, or like if they're writing a thriller, or if they're writing a romance, like if you want it to be funny, you got to laugh when you're writing it, like that kind of thing. And if that's not the purpose, the other purpose of this is the awareness of the energy.
I have a question about that. Like, I like that distinguishing between being more intellectual in your head, and that has a different effect on the writing than being more maybe sensual and in your body. There's another distinction I notice, which has to do with how honest you're being as a writer. When I read writers that are trying to make themselves look good or are trying to present themselves as being this perfect person or something, as opposed to it could be the most villainous person just writing totally honestly about what a wretch they are, all the terrible shit they did, but they're not trying to hide it. You like that writer so much more. And there's something with the first one, you're just like, yeah, it's just, you can just tell there's something writing. It's just like,
yeah, it's like to continue that metaphor of like, the meaning comes through and around and carried by the words. It's like there's a mismatch between the energy and the words. Like the words are like, you're like, the words are lying to me. That's not the energy.
Right. Yeah, that's it.
What it is. Yeah. See, that is so
it's out of alignment. That's so true. It's like when someone's lying to you, you feel it.
Yeah.
You feel it in your body. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we can talk about this later too, maybe, but there's an absence of curiosity. If you're so self-conscious when you're writing to present something that is whatever it is, like good, well written, or, won't harm anybody or won't upset anybody, or if your self-conscious is tuned into any kind of fear or anxiety about what if, it's very difficult to access curiosity.
So true.
And the creative impulse is one that is at its heart curious.
Literally like a sphincter when you're writing.
It closes it.
Your asshole just tightens up because you're so, and then you can't come out.
And
poop out the creativity. Sorry.
Books are written that way. You don't have to access your creativity to write a book and get it published. This is the thing. Like, you can be a really good writer without having that element. I just don't enjoy reading it as much or writing it as much. So it just seems like, let's just stop doing that. But anyway, the other thing that I wanted to say about this exercise, so it's a totally different experience with another letter of the alphabet. So T is one that feels like there's just so many things. If we had started with Y or A, it slows it down. And then there's this other piece that comes up. This is all like a way to check in about how you are thinking about the way you're thinking. You know, like
Yeah.
if there's a letter that there aren't a lot of words that are readily available, then the doubt can creep in of like, I don't have anything. There's nothing, which is, you know, also scary. It's also overwhelming in a different way. So just being aware of that and then being able to just say, like, there's nothing at stake. There's literally nothing at stake in this exercise. There is not a story. This is not a memo. Nothing has to get done. This is just bringing it up. There's also, in the classes that I teach, there's also writers are, we just have these active minds that just like are always evaluating. And there's like, oh, that word doesn't have enough syllables to count, or that's not interesting enough, or that word sounds so much like tent and tentative. I'm using the same root, so that doesn't count. So anything that comes up, basically any message, any internal narrative that comes up while you're doing this, you can see, name, and kind of laugh at and just see like it doesn't matter, which is why it's my go-to before I start a day because I don't want to evaluate anything in my day, or just especially before writing anything. Before you just start writing your essay or getting into your book, just checking your temperature about how you're talking to yourself about writing today is just a really nice way to start, so you can see sort of what's up and how you're talking to yourself, because it doesn't matter.
Well, it's a great way to actually get insight into some of your go-to patterns, you know, because
Yeah.
presumably everyone's got their own racket that they're, putting over on themselves. And you're like, oh, I can see that pretty sharply now.
Yep. So that's number one.
Number one.
Okay. Number two. This is my deep noticing, or I'm saying it's a deep noticing practice. I don't think it's my practice, but this is my second favorite. This is also how I start all of my retreats when I do Story State of Mind retreats in person. It's often how I start writing practice myself and when I'm leading groups. And it's also a great practice just to start as a morning awakening, like a morning meditation. Write down a list. I'm going to set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes. We'll check in at 3 minutes and see. Write down a list of 10 things that you notice right now that you haven't noticed before. And these should emerge from physical noticing. So something that you see, hear, feel, a texture, feel in the air, feel around you with your skin, taste. What are the 5 senses? And smell. And they don't need to be fancy noticings. They shouldn't have metaphor, actually. There's no narrative, there's no meaning behind any of these details. These are things around you in detail that you notice now that you haven't noticed before now. So keep it simple and true.
Do you want us to write down the descriptions of them, or we're kind of just like noting them?
Naming.
Write down the description.
Okay.
Write down what it is you see, hear, feel, taste, or touch. Just another minute should be good. You can go longer if you need.
That's good.
All right, so finish up that last one. Nice. How do you feel?
Feel good.
I feel like we probably both have very different experiences because this is my living room. So I was looking around and feeling around, and the first things that I noticed were the things that I always notice. So then I had to be like, well, what else is here? And so for Jeff, I'm curious to see what that is like to do this in a place that you don't live in.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, actually, it's very, I do know this living room very well. So I felt like I couldn't include all the things about your environment that I normally notice, even though I didn't necessarily look at each one when I came in. I was so aware of all the elements. I felt like somehow that wouldn't have been allowed. Right. So I wrote about all other things like body
Bodily
things
stuff. Okay, yeah.
Right.
sounds. And I did write about the fact that I suddenly noticed that you and I both had white shirts with
The
long
stripes.
stripes down the front, which was hilarious.
I noticed that I moved from outward to inward. Like the first ones are things I noticed with my eyes, like in the environment. And then it was like the moisture in my hands and my clammy toes and the stinging feeling in my nostril.
I had moisture in my toes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a theme here.
Yeah.
We got wet toes.
Do you have a heater? Do you have a heater down, a baseboard heater down at the bottom?
I got the
You
hot
got the
boot.
hot.
Oh yeah, of course, hot boot.
I don't have any excuses. I just have my toes out and they're cold and clammy. So
He's transmitting the energy
Yeah,
of the hot foot over. It's like empathy. So okay,
But presence for sure. Like
presence, yeah.
wasn't more like I had the experience of noticing a few very subtle things in the back of my mind and in my body that, and so much like Tasha, kind of it went from outside, more sounds, a few visuals, and then it went further and further in through sensations, and finally I got at this sort of background, low level sort of agitation, a sudden sense of my 5-year-old son Eden, realizing that he's always a little bit on my mind, and he was there too, like this little guy tooling around in my head. And similarly with Sarah, like almost like a sense of like low level security about my, it's weird. It was in my consciousness in a way.
That's so sweet.
So nice.
Some points there.
Sweet. I
Make
hope
sure
she
watches
listens
this
to-
episode.
The reason I like this exercise in the morning, there's so many reasons, but I like it in the morning as an alternative to morning pages. You know, the Julia Cameron morning pages, because morning pages doesn't have to always be about your thoughts, but it's a brain dump. You know, the idea is that it's a brain dump. So you're like getting all this stuff out of your head. I came to do this because after doing morning pages for a while when I was working on novels and stories, I kind of used like 3 pages of brain dump sort of re-triggered thoughts. Like I just kept thinking after writing about my thoughts, and I just wanted to like get out of my thoughts. I didn't want more of my thoughts. So I think obviously there's an incredible benefit for that. But as an alternative, a way to calm the intellectual, the narrating, the mind that's making a story out of everything. Yeah. That's not what you're writing. You're writing unfiltered presence as you are noticing it. So it's like the isness of a sound is all you're noticing. It's very plain. It's like if you're not making a story out of it and you're not dressing it up with metaphors and making meaning and connections, it's very plain. And the truth comes from that plain. And then you have this like it's alive. Mm-hmm. The details are alive. So will you read some of what you wrote? Like pick a few?
Actually, I have one observation that came to me while you were talking. I realized this is something that I do. Like part of the reason why I carry notebooks with me all the time is like I'll very often, take myself to happy hour, sit at a bar by myself. And it's like really important that I do it by myself because I love to just observe. And then sometimes I'll just write kind of like things observed today. And I'll just write, like, they have no reason other than I noticed them, like somebody's shirt, somebody's hat, a sentence that was said, or like the smell in a room. But what was different about doing this just here in this room and kind of like intentionally, there's not a lot going on in here, was that I realized that even then when I'm just noting stuff, I'm judging if it's good enough to write down. Like if I'm in public and there's 1,000 things going on, I can pick the most exciting things, the things that may generate a story, or I could incorporate it into a story someday because it was interesting or quirky. Here I was like, as I went down, the things got kind of just smaller and more mundane, but they're like magical. Even like the last one I wrote was the bubbles in my soda water rising up two at a time, which the bubbles, instead of going one at a time, there's this one spot where it was like always two. And
Just wait a second. Just wait a second. Just read the sentence. Just the sentence.
the bubbles in my soda water coming up two at a time.
Isn't that sweet?
Yeah. And I was like, but I was watching them while being like waiting for something else to come in. And then I was like, oh no, that's what I'm noticing. And then I just wrote, but like, yeah. But this activity also has a way of getting underneath that threshold of like, is this important enough?
That's right.
And then everything is just so rich with meaning. Like one of the things I wrote down was the scratched up peeling plastic on the bottom of Jeff's boot. Like that in itself is a story, right? Like there's like, it's scratched up. Why is it? Is it because he's been walking on it a lot? Is it used? You know what I mean?
Totally.
It may not cross that threshold otherwise.
Yeah. This is why I love it when you're in your house and it's like a morning practice, because it's a training, right? It's a training of noticing the presence and the details in the mundane, which I think it's a way to extend time. It's a way to feel like you have more of it. It's a way to feel alive and be present in your life. And it also, if you are a writer, it's like, this is exactly how a character would fill a scene with detail, is the same way. It's like a patterning of thought and awareness that you can take with you as just a human being with a consciousness, and also as a creative person looking for all of these tools. And well, not even tools, they're like ingredients that you can use. They're imbued with like presence because you notice them with presence. So it's that same transmission of presence. And I put this together over the years working with writers who were just like really trying to write or like looking for information to fill. And there was an interview with, it could have been Mary Ruffley, but the poem that she was referencing in this interview was A Summer Day by Mary Oliver. You know, the one so in the story that I heard, Mary Oliver went to her neighbor's birthday party. It was in the summer. And while she was there, she probably had a notebook like you, Tasha, like carrying it around with her. When she was there, they were eating cupcakes and a grasshopper started eating the cupcake out of her hand. And this is what she made the poem out of. So the 3 lines that I really love about this grasshopper: the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. And if you just look at those 3 lines, they're very plain observations. Moving jaws back and forth instead of upside down. It's like if you're just looking without making a story about anything, you're getting something essential out of that moment. And when we see that, or however we process the information, when we feel or know or hear that grasshopper in our own mind's eye, it's the same grasshopper. Like it transcends space and time. It's the same grasshopper.
Yeah. And I guess what I'm getting from what you're saying is it's like, it's not on us to concoct some story. Like the meaning is there. It's on us to just notice what someone else may not notice and then offer up the noticing.
And then you can do something with it if you want to.
Yeah.
We are meaning making machines. Like when we're in the magical zone, everything is connected. So when we're in a place of curiosity and meaning making, we can make anything mean it. You can make a metaphor out of anything. 2 different things can just be compared to each other because it's like the building blocks of life. It's connection. But first you got to know how to see those little building blocks. And then you can put them together.
So you're making me think about why I like certain writers,
Yeah.
I think because there's so many different kinds of styles and there's so many ways of representing reality. And like one of my favorite writers is Ursula Le Guin. And I love her so much. And what's interesting about her is like if you read like Tehanu or Lavinia, her last book, or it's so close to the bone. It's these spare, just like what you're saying, very spare observations of life that are so wise and so unsentimental. And it has this effect of it's very meditative. So I feel like it's medicine reading her.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Similarly, like same but different. My favorite writer is Kurt Vonnegut. I don't know if you can tell, but this entire shelf is just Kurt Vonnegut. What I've always liked about him is like his stories are so outlandish that you know you're not really there for the story. But the story is kind of like a whatever. He's like, well, I guess they wanted a story. Here's a story. But it's just like ripe with all these just random noticings about humans that are not judgmental. Like he's not like, this is the way it should be. And what, it's literally just like, and people are lonely and we were raving drunk on oil, and like he just makes these like observations about human nature that are actually just kind of gently put in front of you to make of them as you will, rather than like heavy-handedness, right?
I feel like there's something, the reason I do this in my in-person retreats, because generally people come and we're kind of like all nervous and we're starting something new and we don't know each other very well. And it's a little, and there's a real what we do is we do this for 5 minutes. We're all in a shared space. We all write about 10 things that we noticed that we didn't notice before. And then everyone reads one sentence, one noticing, one detail. It's not even a sentence. And it's a meditation to read. And I think that it's again, this feeling of the feeling transmission. So the feeling that comes from noticing without evaluating or narrating or labeling or compartmentalizing, whatever, that is spacious. It's a spacious kind of awareness. So when we read it, we get to share it. We share the same conscious space or that same spaciousness. It spreads, and it's calming to just be aware of what is. I think it's just calming to be without a narrative and just be like the animal self for a minute. So in a retreat, when everyone goes around and reads one thing that they noticed that may or may not be the same thing, everyone notices something different, but it also is true because we're all in the same space. Everyone just comes together.
Oh God, I see this all the time on retreat and when I'm teaching retreats. And my way of describing it is there's a moment when somebody shares something real. They're sharing a true thing that they're experiencing, a feeling they suddenly noticed. And often there's an emotionality. You can hear a pin drop. There's a gathering in the space that I can't describe, but it's like, I know we are in the real now. And it is so palpably authentic. I'm not even saying this about what the person is offering. It creates a shared space of the real. It is a contemplative experience that is so, it's the mystery actually. It's pointing you to this crazy thought, or this is a thought that I'll represent it, but that somehow reality is on a continuum. It's like you can be present, and then you can be really present, and you can be really, really present. And there's a palpable sense of difference in that. And the more present you are, the more everything leans into itself, the more interconnectivity you see, the more mystery is there. It's like it defies words, it's the sacred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's interesting. I think this is all related to what we're talking about. I often use writing, my framing of it, how I think about it is I use it sometimes to close the authenticity gap. Like there's what I think about a subject, and then there's what I really think about a subject. But I often don't know what I really think about it. I start off in this cliche layer, like I'm going to write about, how I feel about the government, or I'm going to write about something, whatever. Not that I do write often about those things, but if I were to start writing, I would start out in the kind of cliche layer of inherited opinion and things I've read from wherever, and like without knowing it. But then I would keep writing, and I would keep writing, and at a certain point, I would realize that that's not really what I think. There's something, or rather, even there's something hard to articulate about this thing I'm trying to write about, and the thing that it's making it hard is the very interesting thing itself.
Yep.
But I have to kind of struggle with that for a while before
I have a third exercise for that.
All right.
I have a third exercise exactly for that. So the reason that we are doing that in this order is just like the first one, as you can see, it's like a warm up to just get into the realm of letting words come to you instead of you making them up and thinking them into place. And then also being just more aware of how you're thinking about how you're thinking. The second exercise, also a warm up, brings you into presence, brings you into a place where you're a little bit more whole minded and feeling and thinking maybe at the same time, and then thinking kind of goes away and you're just feeling and noticing. So some of the intellectual really comes down, and the pure presence is allowed to come into words. So you open the conduit. And then the next phase, exercise number 3, is, well, it comes in 2 parts. The first is a very simple prompt, again, taught to me by my first writing teacher, Natalie Goldberg. Never gets old. What I really want to write about is. What I really want to write about is. And you can change the emphasis. You can be like, what I really want to write about is, or what I really want to write about is, or what I want to write. You can play with it. I'm going to give us 5 minutes, and you can repeat the sentence. So you can get into something and just like start going, stream of consciousness, and go, or you can continually repeat, what I really want to write about is, and what I really want to write about is, what I really want to write about is, and just keep doing that for 5 minutes.
Okay. Feel free to add the occasional encouraging prompt over these 5 minutes.
I sure will. I sure will. You can bring your body into this too. So similarly to the list of words that started with the letter T, remember to go slow. And as you're writing words, you're also drawing letters. So you're making pictures, you're making marks on a page. So you're going to bring the creative, nonlinear part of your mind to the page as well. What you're doing is inviting your unconscious mind to rise up with your conscious. So play in that little swirly space. If you start to hear yourself thinking, or the thoughts are interrupting the flow, just bring yourself back to the feeling of the ink on the page. Loosen your arm muscle and your hand muscles. Notice the drops of your Y's and the dots of the I's, and just notice little pieces about how the handwriting looks, to bring another part of your mind online. And if you feel tempted to, like, if you make a spelling error or anything, just leave it and move on, start a new line. Don't cross anything out. We're not in an editing or evaluating place here. This is an opening. One more minute. What I really want to write about is, one more line. And when you finish, just put your hand over the paragraph you wrote so you can't see it. We're not checking in on it. It doesn't need to happen. We're just stirring stirring up the soup.
Okay.
Part B, same thing. This time the prompt is, what I really don't want to write about is.
Mhm. That's funny.
Same thing. 5 minutes.
Oh my God, what is the difference? One word: banking.
Remember to breathe, exhale, loosen your jaw. Writing is physiological and mental and emotional. And see if you can have the sensation of like starting a sentence with the prompt, what I really don't want to write about is, and not knowing what's going to come after is, and moving your pen and see what happens. One more minute. Okay. Finish that sentence. And again, just let it be without rereading it.
Okay.
We're just waiting for Tasha. She's finishing up.
Click.
All right. Beautiful. And now the third prompt here, which is sort of an option I just added now because I felt called to, is another great prompt. But after doing those two, it's nice to just kind of alchemize it with a quick prompt. What I know is true is just a couple minutes. What I know is true is, and write until you feel that settled feeling. Could also be something that I know is true is. All right, finishing that up. Nice.
Nice.
Thanks. So, any comments before I before I add a narrative to what you just did?
I liked just being surprised by what came out. Like me and my best friend have this game. We call it the armpit game, and it's like this is just a mirror into how weird it's me and Lauren, how weird we are. We like will literally sit in bars together and play this game where you reach into your armpit and you go like this, and then you have to tell the other person what you found in there. And it's like it's endless fun. We've been doing this for like decades. So it'll just be
game.
like salad, like crafts, horny toad, like a tea cozy, like anything. Like, and you don't think about it. We'll meet people. We'll be like, "Do you want to play this game with us?" And the first couple are, people are trying to be funny, but then there's like this flow you get into where you realize actually people are only laughing at the most outrageous, the most true, like straight from the brainstem, weird stuff.
Spaghetti.
Yeah, spaghetti.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like a heartfelt sense,
Yeah.
like tender.
But I think I like
tender truth.
Doors open that wide is like, yeah, you'll get like weird stuff, but then you'll also be surprised by like, oh wow, or like I think that I wrote what I really want to write about is the fog in San Francisco. I'm like, oh,
Why? Do you?
that.
Did you? Who knew?
Maybe that would be a fun thing to write. I don't know, but I have to write spaghetti and the attitudes of Southern babes to get there. Like,
Yeah, it wouldn't have come without those first three.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
really weird stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then any sensations worth noting as you wrote what you don't want to write about?
Yeah, that was all very physical. Ew. Like it's like, like very really I was like, I don't want to write about puking and pooping. And like it's just really gross stuff was coming out, and like I don't want to write about sex trafficking. Things that like actually trigger me physically. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. It's so kinesthetic. So it's a sticky place to be.
Yeah. Sticky
Well, it's
spot.
funny because what I noticed about what I don't want to write about is it started. There was a kind of zeal actually, and I wrote about like banking and tax rates and investment strategies and the small angry men with grave faces cursing at a computer screen, and it was like, and then I realized I really like writing about this. Actually, that there's nothing that I don't want to write about, in the sense that because even the things I don't like are actually interesting to write about.
Oh my gosh.
And then I was like, what do I not want to write about? Yeah, I don't even know. And then you give me another. Even that, if I was writing about it, then I mean, maybe not. That doesn't come to mind as something I want to write about. But I mean, if I was starting to write about it, then it would become suddenly
like if I was like, give me 300 words on puking and pooping, you'd do it.
But it's sort of like a work of art, right? Like a work of art. As soon as you put a frame around it, it's art.
Yes.
Like it doesn't matter what it is. It's like it could be the most ugly picture of a barn, but it's a picture. It's you put a frame around. You're like, oh my god, barns exist. And you're like, really, or it's a kid's drawing or whatever. It's like it suddenly puts an existential highlighter under it, and therefore its own the existentness of it is enough.
This is so fun for me to talk to both of you. It's like two writers who have done so much work in awareness and meditation and like consciousness. Often in my classes, these are not the responses. There's often a big blank. It's shadow work, right? Like you're going into the unconscious, like with the negative, the prompt, what I don't want to write about is it already gets under into other parts of our conscious materials. When I do this, it's always the thing that I don't want to write about is always the topic for the next book or the next story. It's always like, of course, that's what I want to write about. What I really don't want to write about is a shortcut to where the good material is of the thing that I don't want to look at, like the thing that I need to figure out, or the thing that is bothering me, or the thing that needs to be resolved, that's unresolved, that I need to harmonize. The element that needs to be harmonized in order for the next level of integrity needs to come out of that, right?
So this is a spiritual practice of writing,
It is right here. Yeah.
So what are some examples? I mean, things you've heard over the years of people when they're writing that section and that are they're getting and the things they realize, oh gosh.
Well, sometimes it's just the critical faculty between what is okay to write and what is not okay to write just is too hard. It's too stiff. Like anyone who's worked as an English prof, I do work with a lot of like recovering English lit career, like and just like what is good and what is not good is so strong and opaque that being asked to write about what you don't want to write about, just there's a blank, there's a block, it can be quite painful because there's nothing there. And if this is happening to anyone who's listening right now, if you find that you're just like hitting a blank and you're kind of sweating a little bit or feel gross or feel blank and kind of numbed out and dissociated, well, you could like call a friend and have a glass of water. You don't have to do this. Or if you want to, you could put your pen in your non-dominant hand and do the same exercise from that, or write what I really want to write about, but with your non-dominant hand. And it'll do similar work of the shadow. It'll bring up something that you didn't know. And you're focused in that case on just trying to make the letters look right. So that takes enough of your conscious focus off so that something else can slip in there that wants to come out, that wants you to see it.
It's funny because there's a similar thing that happened in the first one, but different. It was like I started writing, and then all of a sudden I realized the thing that really gives me joy, like writing about magic. I love thinking about magic, reading about magic, thinking about the reality of magic as opposed to the grotesque way or cliched or cartoon way in which there's the kind of public imagining of it, like the real understated weirdness of it. And I was like, oh yeah, but I'd never let myself write about that or do that. So it was sort of like gave me permission to kind of find the thing that I really would like to write about, but never do. And that was also
Bingo.
permission.
So this is the insight. So remember that, like take it. That's your prompt for next time. The other thing you can do once you have this, so it's nice to just cover it and not read your work right away, because it also get that meaning making, evaluating mind, just short it out, just unplug it for like 24 hours if you can, or at least like a few hours before you look at it again with kinder eyes that are actually curious about what I wrote instead of just like suspicious, like did I write anything good or not good? Was that valid or not valid? You don't even want to entertain that. But then when you do go back to it, you can follow the energy. So just like that, like those little points that feel like, oh, there's moment of insights that are a little flickering and alive and sparkly with a little bit of that magic, that will be there for you when you go back. That'll still be there. It's a power source. It's like a little firefly. So you can go back and find it and then follow those. Those are glimmers in your own work that you can follow to put together the next thing that you want to either do, if it's not a writing piece, or like write, if there's something that you want to write about. But if you're not a writer, it's just like you're creating your own path of breadcrumbs, of sparkles. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question, and this is kind of like a big question and a perfect place to kind of begin to wrap this up. It has to do with the practice of writing over time. And I want to be careful about how I articulate this because I don't want to make it instrumental. But what I want to ask is something like, how does the practice of writing over time change us? But I don't want to do it with an agenda that it has to somehow be in a positive direction, or it has to be like it liberates your suffering, or it may do that. But I also want it to be like writing is filled with, struggling neurotic people who are writers their entire lives and who die as struggling neurotic people. So there's nothing about writing. So it may be all writing. Maybe it's the way you write. Maybe there's just so many different kinds of outcomes for a writing practice. How do you want us to respond to that? And I'm sure Josh would say
Now, like, how much time do we have?
I know.
It's gonna make me. This is like the heart of the whole thing, Jeff. Okay, really gonna try to keep this concise. If you can help me keep it, because I have lots of thoughts on this. This is what I do. I am a recovered, very, very, very unhappy writer, and I don't even want to get into the personal part too much here. But what this has been a direction of finding the answer to this question. I don't think that I think writing is a thing that happens. I don't think writing is the problem or the solution. It is my opinion that a separation is not what our consciousness wants. I feel like integration. I believe that integration and wholeness is what's desired, and writing can help that. It's one mode that can help that. Also, we are made of stories. We are made of stories. So writers are these incredible conduits of story, of energy, of feeling, of emotional human thought and awareness and beingness. And if the transmission of any story is fraught with suffering, our culture is made of suffering. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a way to write where you are writing with connection. And there is a way to write where you are writing with separation. And I think that stories can be written in both ways. Writing can separate us. Words and stories can chop us apart. They can also bring us together and create wholeness. And I think that the state of mind that we are in, to learn that it's okay to have a sense of wholeness, to think and feel at the same time, in other words, to have thinking and feeling online at once, and to be connected to each other, and also to have the capacity to use your intellect, because writers are so smart, they're so thinking, they're in the realm, and this separation between the intellect and everything else, that's, whatever, it's like a topic for another podcast. But I think that causes great harm to the writers, and then to the culture who we are living those stories. So yeah, I think that we work on our writing and our writing works on us. It's one of the things that happens. And that's what I'm here for, is like this topic, this piece of bringing all that incredible intellect, and then also what you can do with story structure. What kind of stories are we telling? I mean, we can go down this whole path of like what the form and the content are doing together when the state of mind is in this place. So yeah.
And what you're saying is not that you could write about great alienation and pain in a way that makes people feel truly seen because they're experiencing that. So it has nothing to do with the subject matter of what you're writing about. It has to do with something else. What were you going to say, Tasha?
This is something that is so close to my heart, and I've read I've written like 3 halves of books on this, because I encountered this first in music, right? As a musician and working in popular music, especially, in like hip hop and R&B and electronic. And like, especially in music, because the artist is also the brand, and you're expected to kind of like live what your songs say, and like have you're never supposed to hang it up and just be a regular person. So there's this especially like tortured artist ideal among artists. You're supposed to be sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and just blowing your life apart and stuff. And that was never what I wanted to do. Although in my 20s, I dabbled in blowing my life up. But, there was a point where I was like, can't I just make music that like speaks for the culture, that is the stories of our culture, without also having to be a person who is just so, self-abused? And what I personally came to and have been like trying to write out is exactly what you're saying, which is that there's a way of writing. And I know a lot of artists and, in music, who I always say like they believe their own hype, or they drink their own Kool-Aid, where it's like the story that they're telling is, maybe it's one of like bravado or, of affluence or whatever. And they created the story and they're offering the story, but then they also believe that like they're like watching their own movie that they made, right? And so you forget that you are also the author of it, and then you're stuck in it, right? So I really feel like there's the tools of our art, which is like writing narrative or making music or dance or whatever it is, and then there's the like awareness that you bring about the nature of awareness itself, right? Like if I come to my art with the understanding, like you said, we're looking for a sense of wholeness here. I'm not separate from my community. I'm not separate from the people listening. And this is an offering. And what does it even mean to be a person? If I bring that, then everything that I write, even if it's like, fuck these hoes, it's like, it can be enlightening, or it can inspire community, or.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, my latest book was so sneaky. Like I did not want to, I was like, that's okay. That was my last book, because I kind of figured out that actually didn't work for me. And then I wrote this one from a totally different place. It did not feel like writing a book, because my story, my paradigm around what writing was when it was from a separate place, didn't function anymore. But like, lo and behold, 250 pages written in another way. So there's another way. There are other ways.
Sarah, this has been so fun.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm such a big fan.
Well,
the timing has been perfect, because I don't know when this is coming out, but we're recording this in December, and January I'm restarting writing. I had to take like the last 8 months off because I was so busy. So I'm like, I canceled everything. My schedule is clear. I'm just basically meditating with this guy and writing for a year.
Book that you're talking about.
Oh, I don't know. There's like 9 books that I'm talking about. There's so many books.
Well, what about you? So tell our listeners your website, your book.
Yeah. This book is, I mean, part of my agreement in the writing of this book is that there is no hustle. This is not a book. There is no launch. It's an opening. It's not a rocket. It's here. It's here. It has no window. It will stay in print as long as I want it to stay in print. It takes a lot of the pressure off, and it's called Stories: A State of Mind. And I'm actually going to be working with book clubs and with readers and with people who want to do these practices with me in Centered, which is my membership site. It's like an online writing space where we do meditations once a month on a different theme. We follow the story structure of the year throughout the year. And it's a place for writers who are independently working on their work can come together and work together and just co-regulate and do these practices together. And then I have lots of classes and courses and programs for technique and all that good stuff too at sarahselecky.writingschool.com.
Amazing. We'll include the link in the
Yeah.
post.
Yeah, you make me think of body doubling, the whole neurodivergent thing where
That's what we do.
I love that where you
Writers have been doing that for like writing groups have been body doubling for years.
I get together and we want to do work and it's like, or Sarah and I or something, and I start writing or you start writing and I draft you. You know, your energy of focus and commitment helps me pull in.
Totally.
And we kind of end up.
It's called body doubling?
Body doubling,
cool.
Yeah. It's an ADHD thing.
I mean, it's pretty sweet. In Centered, we do like at the top of the month, I do a hypnosis or a visualization or a meditation. So everyone just gets into a frame of mind that's like on the theme of spaciousness or focus or whatever, support, connection, whatever the theme of the month is. And then 45 minutes, we just co-write together from there. So it's like extra focused, delicious writing time.
Sarah, it's so cool to see how your work has evolved over the years. It's like awesome.
You too. This has been really great. I love it. I loved writing with you today.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on, friend.
Thanks for adventuring with us. Pop over to mindbodpod.com and let us know in the comments how this episode landed for you. Don't forget to subscribe for new episodes every week. And if you want to support our crazy adventures, get fun perks and exclusives along the way, join us as a paid subscriber. See you next week.